Israel has received a shipment of heavy Mk-84 bombs from the United States after U.S. President Donald Trump lifted an embargo imposed on these weapons by the previous Biden administration. According to a statement from Israel's defense ministry on Sunday morning, the shipment of over 1,500 Mk-84 bombs arrived on Saturday night through the Ashdod seaport and was transferred to Air Force bases around the country. The Mk-84 is an unguided 2,000-pound bomb, which the Biden administration blocked to Israel over concern the weapons would be used to strike in Gaza. In one of his first acts as president, Trump lifted the weapons embargo. Another shipment containing 132 D9 bulldozers is now also on its way to Israel. The bulldozers were purchased by Israel, but the Biden administration froze their transfer. Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz, in a statement, thanked President Trump and the U.S. administration for their unwavering support of Israel and said the shipment represents a significant asset for the Air Force and the IDF and serves as further evidence of the strong alliance between Israel and the United States. He added that during their recent conversation, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth reaffirmed America's commitment to continue providing Israel with all necessary tools to ensure its security. And meanwhile, these are fateful days of decisions for the immediate course of the hostage ceasefire deal and the potential return to war in Gaza. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio arrived in Israel, indicating that Washington and Jerusalem will be exactly on the same page moving forward. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
My dear friend Marco, it's great to welcome you in Jerusalem. President Trump is the greatest friend that Israel has ever had in the White House. And the visit in Washington reflected that in every way. And your visit here reflects it in every way. Today, Secretary Rubio and I had a very productive discussion with our staffs on a number of issues. None of them are more important than Iran. Israel and America stand shoulder to shoulder in countering the threat of Iran.
The common theme in all of these challenges is Iran. It is the single greatest source of instability in the region. Behind every terrorist group, behind every act of violence, behind every destabilizing activity, behind everything that threatens peace and stability for the millions of people who call this region home, is Iran.
Secretary of State Rubio is a longtime friend of Israel, and his first Middle East stop in office was in Jerusalem. Rubio arrived after President Trump's Saturday noon deadline for Hamas to release all Israeli hostages had come and gone. Trump had said he would take a tougher stance than Israel, but it was Netanyahu's choice.
I would take a different stance, but it depends. Look, it depends what Bibi's going to do. It depends what Israel's going to do.
Since Trump's comment, 3 Israeli hostages were released yesterday as per agreement. Trump says Israel must decide on its course of action. Prime Minister Netanyahu has yet to indicate whether Israel will continue the first phase of the hostage ceasefire deal or resume the war in Gaza. Netanyahu did indicate that he wants to expedite the return of the remaining 6 living hostages of Phase 1 in the coming days. The Prime Minister announced that caravans and some other items would not be allowed to enter Gaza at this time. The statement also read, "The Prime Minister appreciates the U.S. President's full support. We acknowledge Trump's leadership and the ongoing coordination with the United States." The State Department said the Rubio trip will center on freeing American and all other hostages, advancing Phase 2 of the ceasefire agreement in Gaza, and countering the activities of the Iranian regime and its proxies.
The president's also been very bold about his view of what the future for Gaza should be. Not the same tired ideas of the past, but something that's bold and something that, frankly, took courage and vision in order to outline. And it may have shocked and surprised many. But what cannot continue is the same cycle where we repeat over and over again and wind up in the exact same place.
The visit by Rubio closely follows President Trump's proposal to relocate the population out of the Gaza Strip and have the area turned over to the U.S. control for reconstruction. Ahead of his visit, Rubio said that any plan allowing Hamas rule in Gaza is unacceptable and ineffective in resolving the conflict. Trump is taking the lead, he said, since no other viable plan has been proposed.
And joining us now with more on U.S. President Trump's latest comments, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's visit and Israel's impending decisions regarding the war in Gaza, is Dr. Dan Diker, president of the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
So a lot to discuss. Let's start first with the weapons shipment. You know, U.S. President Trump lifting the embargoes placed by the Biden administration and the shipments now finally arriving here in Israel. You know, first I'll say President Trump, unlike President Biden, really showing the world that there's no daylight between Israel and the United States. You know, so should we see this as perhaps preparations by the U.S. and Israel to resume the war in Gaza and perhaps even abandon phase 2 of the deal?
First of all, a very important question. The immediate delivery of bombs that were held up by the prior administration is just the first sign of what I would call total alignment between Washington and Jerusalem, and that Rubio's arrival so close after the Washington summit shows that there's really a continuation of this total alignment. One aspect of this, Liddell, that hasn't been discussed is that in Washington, it was very clear. I understand from our sources at JCFA that both governments understand that Israel is going to return to fighting in Gaza, and there may not be a second stage. And the alternative is to extend the first stage and get back as many live hostages as possible before returning to a wartime footing, because it's very clear Marco Rubio has been saying now for 2 years, consistently, daily, that the Hamas terror organization must be destroyed. I mean, he said it scores of times on the record. And he's also said something very important that I don't think any Secretary of State of the United States has said so clearly, so articulately, immediately after taking office, and that is that the Iranian regime is the source of all subversion, instability, and terror in the Middle East and around the world. You couldn't have a clearer statement by a Secretary of State. So what he has done is to integrate the Hamas tentacle of the Iranian octopus with the head of the octopus itself, which is in Tehran. So you have an alignment strategically as well as tactically regarding the hostages, which Rubio said includes American hostages, not only hostages from many other countries, as well as pointing a very long finger at the Iranian regime. That's total alignment between two major allies, the United States and Israel.
And, you know, speaking about the Islamic Republic of Iran, Trump has said, though, that he would like to try a diplomatic approach. And, you know, on the other hand, we are seeing increased, you know, sort of chatter that Israel might potentially strike Iran's nuclear sites. So what's going on here? I mean, will Israel be able to move forward with any sort of military strike? And what would the U.S.'s role be if that were to be the case?
Well, I think Israel has made it very clear, Prime Minister Netanyahu and others have made it clear that ultimately the time for diplomacy, the window for diplomacy is closing very, very fast and may already be shut. President Trump has been talking about maximum pressure since he left the JCPOA in the beginning of his first term. And clearly, it seems that Israel will let the president take the lead on a maximum pressure campaign, which in the first term, as you remember, basically broke the bank across Iran and caused tremendous financial distress and a lot of restiveness among the Iranian people. I think both countries understand that ultimately regime change will have to come from within Iran, and that maximum pressure, which President Trump means maximum financial pressure. Let's remember, President Trump is the world's leading economic warrior, and that he showed that in the first term that maximum pressure can work against the Iranian regime. At the end of the day, I think that the president understands, and many around him understand, certainly Secretary of State Rubio understands, that ultimately it may be that regime change and hitting Iran's nuclear sites can only happen through military force.
So, Dr. Dan Diker, thank you for your analysis today, and we'll, of course, continue to cover Rubio's visit and any developments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue.
For generations, owning a home in Eretz Yisrael has been a cherished dream, one of faith, heritage, and belonging. Now, with Sparta Real Estate, that dream is within reach. From the spiritual heart of Jerusalem to the vibrant Jewish life of Ra'anana, the seaside beauty of Netanya, or the energy of Tel Aviv, Eliyahu Kleinman will guide you every step of the way. With beautiful homes at various price points and all bureaucracy handled for you, it's never been easier. Scan the QR code now, and Eliyahu will personally help you find your home in Israel.
And on Saturday, Israel welcomed home 3 more hostages, Sagi, Sasha, and Yael. ILTV's Shosh Bedrosian is in Hostages Square with the heartwarming reunions.
Lidar, for nearly 500 days, Sagi Dekolchen, Yair Horn, and Sasha Trufanoff were hidden away from the world in darkness, in tunnels, living in horrid conditions, having no connection to reality or the outside world whatsoever since they were kidnapped on October 7th here in Hostage Square. When those 3 men were being released on Saturday, it was electric, with people crying, cheering, embracing each other as these 3 men were just moments away from seeing their families. 36-year-old Sagi Dekolchen hugs his wife Avital in an emotional reunion in the very first moment they saw each other since October 7th. The last time he saw Avital, she was 7 months pregnant and managed to save her life and her 2 young children by hiding in their safe room. Her name is Shachar Mazal, Avital tells Sagi, the name of their 1-year-old daughter that was born 2 months after American-Israeli Dekolchen was kidnapped. It's perfect, he said. Dekolchen was kidnapped from Kibbutz Nir Oz after he alerted the community there was terrorist infiltration and confronted them. There was no sign of life released of him for the duration of his captivity and was completely cut out from the outside world. He's the 2nd American to be released in the phase 1 of this deal. 2 weeks ago, American-Israeli Keith Siegel also returned home. Argentinian-Israeli Yair Horn reunited with his family, dressed head to toe in Hapoel Beersheva equipment, a soccer team he has been devoted to for years. During his helicopter ride from Re'im military base to the hospital, they flew over the soccer stadium. A bittersweet reunion for the 46-year-old with his family as he embraced them without his brother Eitan. Both brothers were kidnapped from Yair's home on Kibbutz Nir Oz on the morning of October 7th. Eitan was visiting for the holiday weekend from Kfar Saba. 29-year-old Sasha Trufanoff came home to big embraces from his girlfriend Sapir, his mom, and grandmother. All 4 of them were kidnapped from their home on Kibbutz Nir Oz, but all of them were released in November of 2023, except for Sasha. The Russian Israeli came home to discover his father, Vitali, was murdered on October 7th after he learned the news from IDF representatives. It is reported he bursted into tears when he heard the news. Russia was advocating for his release as the country holds close ties to Hamas. However, Palestinian Islamic Jihad was holding Trufanoff for the 500 days he was in captivity. Lidar, we are expecting 3 more Israeli hostages to be released on Saturday as per the ceasefire deal we've seen over the last 6 weeks take place. We do know that 14 Israelis still need to come out as part of this first phase of this deal, and we do know that Hamas has suggested that 8 of them are no longer alive.
Thank you, Shosh. And now we turn to ILTV's Ariella Lichiani, who has the new information coming out about the conditions the 3 male hostages endured during their nearly 500 days of Hamas captivity. Let's take a look.
After 498 days in captivity, Israeli hostages Sagi Dekolchen, Yair Horn, and Alexander Sasha Trufanov are back in Israel, receiving care at Sheba and Ichilov medical centers. Their release has revealed the brutal conditions they endured. Held in Hamas tunnels, they faced relentless interrogations, physical torture, and near starvation. They drank salty, undrinkable water and lived among lice, bedbugs, and mold. Many, including Dekolchen, suffered untreated injuries that may now require surgery. Yair Horn, who was held for a time with his brother Eitan, who remains in captivity, provided Israeli authorities with crucial signs of life for other hostages. Meanwhile, Sasha Trufanov spent much of his captivity in solitary confinement. Held by Palestinian Islamic Jihad, like hostages Gadi Moses and Arbel Yehud, who also endured captivity completely alone, Trufanov was cut off from the outside world and only learned of his father's murder upon his return. Dekel Chen was held in a Gaza hospital for his first few weeks in captivity and tortured during interrogations. He carries scars from it, including a shoulder wound he suffered on October 7th. He had no connection to the outside world and didn't know if his family had survived. He learned just 3 days ago that he would be released. The Ministry of Health says the men are now in the early stages of a long rehabilitation process. Despite their physical and emotional scars, they are reunited with their families, surrounded by Israel's top medical teams. The strength of these survivors echoes the stories of previously released hostages, like Karina Ariev, who endured horrific abuse and returned home with severe physical and psychological wounds.
עברו לה את האף, הרביצו לה, שרפו אותה עם הקנים, זרקו אותה על ג'יפ שעמד כל היום בשמש, ויש לה כוויות מזה, והיא הייתה פצועה ודחפו אותה ומשכו אותה ותלשו לה את השערות. זו הייתה התעללות שבא לתואר.
And with at least 73 hostages still in Gaza, half declared dead in absentia, their testimonies are a painful reminder of why Israel must continue fighting to bring everyone home.
Thank you, Ariella. And now, following the return of the 3 hostages, Israel released 369 security prisoners, including 36 serving life sentences for murder. More from ILTV's Steve Leibovitz.
The buses filled with prisoners left Ktziot prison for drop-off in Gaza. Buses from Ophir prison took former inmates to Ramallah. 369 prisoners were set free in Gaza and Judea and Samaria, and some were sent for deportation. The prison authority dressed those for release in shirts with blue stars of David and writing in Arabic saying, "We won't forgive or forget." 36 serving life terms were convicted of murder or multiple murders. Among the life-term prisoners released are Ahmed Barghouti, Ahmed Abu Haber, Bacher Najjar, and Shadi Abu Shaktam, all prominent murderers from the Second Intifada between the years 2000 and 2005. Among those serving life sentences, 10 were sent to Judea and Samaria, 1 to East Jerusalem, and 25 were deported via Egypt. This was the largest number of prisoners freed, but most were arrested in Gaza since the start of the war and are not convicted of terror attacks in Israel. Large crowds were on hand to greet the former prisoners in both locations. In the current phase, Israel agreed to release some 1,900 Palestinian prisoners, including 270 serving life sentences. This in return for 33 Israeli civilians and female soldiers, including 8 who died in captivity.
And in other news, Latino Christian leaders are taking a stand for Israel after wrapping up a major mission aimed at strengthening ties, advocacy, and faith-based support for the Jewish state. More from ILTV's Mayan Hoffman.
A delegation of prominent Hispanic evangelical Christian leaders has just completed a 10-day mission to Israel with Eagle's Wings, aimed at strengthening Christian support for the Jewish state. Led by Bishop Robert Stearns, founder of Eagle's Wings, and Reverend Samuel Rodriguez, president of the National Hispanic Christian Leadership Conference, the visit was one of the largest faith-based Hispanic delegations to Israel in recent years. These leaders are growing in influence across the U.S., including within President Donald Trump's circle. The 30 pastors on the trip collectively reach millions of Latino evangelical Christians in the United States.
This past election that we just saw in America, I think, indicated the growing power of the Latino vote in America. 46% of Latinos voted for Donald Trump, 54% of Latino males. And arguably the most influential figure in Latino evangelical circles is Pastor Sam Rodriguez.
78% of Latino evangelicals, 78% of this fast-growing demographic, the largest growing religious demographic in America, that community voted for President Trump. And again, his stance on Israel in pushing back against this constant angst in the region and what we tolerate. The last 4 years, unfortunately, demonstrated that when America's weak, adversity will arise. Weakness attracts adversity. And Latinos said, there's a new sheriff in town.
The Christian leaders said they came to Israel not just to pray, but to stand in solidarity through action, education, and advocacy. They visited holy sites like the Western Wall, historic landmarks such as Yad Vashem, and met with top political leaders. Rodriguez, recently appointed to Pastor Paula White's team in the White House Faith Office, and Stearns said they hope to use their platforms to advocate for Israel and the Jewish people.
Lovely show of solidarity. And recently on ILTV News, we heard the story of October 7th fallen hero Anel Shapira and the incredible work that Nechama and Hatzalah are doing in his memory. Let's take a look at the clip from the original interview where ILTV's Emily Schrader spoke to Nechama and Hatzalah founder Shmulik Moskowitz and Moshe Shapira, father of Anel Shapira.
Anel was a soldier off duty. He was in a elite unit in the Nachal regime. He went with his best friend, Hirsch Goldberg Polin. He went with him after we had by the meal of Simchat Torah in our house, and after that they went both to the festival. And there is a very strong picture that was taken by Itamar Shapira that was there in the Migonit. That you see Anel standing on the front, at the entrance when all the people are lying on the ground and covering their heads. And he said he was waiting for the terrorists, but then he understood that they are afraid to enter because they saw the shade of Anel inside, and they didn't succeed in shooting him. And he told them, "I believe that now they will try to throw grenades inside. Mm-hmm. So what I will do is I'll try to pick the grenades and throw them back on them. If I succeed, very well. But if something happens to me, you have to continue with that." He succeeded at least 8 grenades to throw back and 1 RPG that was launched but didn't explode. Wow. In one of the movies you see him throwing it back on them. But the third RPG that they launched killed him.
Shmulik, I want to ask you, this baguette truck that you guys are doing, it's named after Aner to honor him, to honor his legacy. How has it been received so far?
Very warm. Actually, when we first approached them, we met them actually 1 year after, on the 7th of October, year after, in the same place. Moshiko, one of the founders as well, my brother, and one of our donors, Alessandra Safa. They met the family, and there was like destiny to meet together and to bring up some idea and project. And we know that Aner liked to cook to his friends. He well known about shakshuka, but shakshuka it's a little bit difficult to us. So we shifted to baguette, to warm baguette, schnitzel, to like from family food. And that's how we thought that it's not only the baguette that we bring to the soldiers, it's been like the story of Aner and heritage of Aner, and also warm them heart, and then they remember why they're fighting for. So I think it's a good concept, and it's very big things that we're doing to the soldiers that are in front line, in all the front lines, like in Gaza or Syria or Lebanon. Food is not only food; it's the warmth that you get from it, and it's the attention that you get from it. And so for Aner as a commander, it was very, very important for him. So I think it's part of his legacy, like the music.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. Rain showers are expected in northern Israel and Jerusalem tonight, with temperatures reaching lows of around 9 degrees Celsius or 48 degrees Fahrenheit. Then tomorrow we'll see clear skies alongside steady temperatures, seeing highs of 18 degrees Celsius or 64 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's a wrap for today's news. For the latest updates from Israel on all your devices, be sure to follow our ILTV channel, subscribe to our newsletter, and explore our website, iltv.tv. Stay informed with the latest news straight from the heart of Israel. I'm Ladar Gravelazi. Be well, stay safe, and thank you so much for watching.